What happens when royalty collides with reality television, and the crown starts to slip in just 36 seconds? No one in that studio knew it yet, but the moment the applause began, the night was already spiraling toward disaster. The stage lights glowed warmer than usual, washing the set in a soft amber hue that made everything feel calm, controlled, almost safe. The audience buzzed with that familiar late-night energy, anticipation mixed with comfort. This was a place where laughter usually came easy, where hard truths were wrapped in humor, where guests left smiling even after being challenged. But tonight the air felt heavier. Charge. Cameras rolled quietly into position. Crew members exchanged glances they didn't fully understand yet. Somewhere backstage, a producer checked their watch and exhaled, unaware they were about to witness one of the most explosive interviews of the decade. And then, she walked out. The applause hit like a wave. Loud. Immediate. Automatic. She smiled as if she'd done this 1,000 times, which she had. A polished wave. A perfectly timed pause. She moved with the confidence of someone who had learned how to command rooms without ever raising her voice. The former Duchess took her seat across the desk, legs crossed just so, posture immaculate, chin lifted with quiet authority. From the outside it looked effortless. From the inside it was anything but. Jon sat across from her, hands folded, eyes observant. He wore his usual expression, half curiosity, half calculation. This was his arena. A place built on uncomfortable questions and the promise that no one, no matter how powerful, would be handled with kid gloves. He smiled. The audience relaxed. "So," he said lightly, voice smooth, conversational. "Welcome. It's good to have you here." She nodded, returning the smile. "Thank you for having me." Everything felt normal. Safe. Almost friendly. For now. The studio temperature was cool, but under the lights, warmth clung to skin. The audience leaned forward slightly, not consciously, just enough to signal interest. This was supposed to be a promotional interview. A reset. A rebrand. A chance to show the world something softer. Something authentic. Jon began exactly where everyone expected. Compliments. Polite curiosity. The easy opening act. "I hear you've been busy," he said, glancing at his notes. "A new lifestyle venture. Wellness, elegance, authenticity. Tell us about it." She brightened instantly. This was her lane. "Well, I've always believed that people deserve more intention in their lives," she began, voice smooth, practiced. "This brand is about bringing luxury, mindfulness, and self-care into everyday living. Making elegance accessible. Real." The audience murmured approval. Heads nodded. Pens scribbled backstage. Jon listened closely, chin tilted slightly to the side. He nodded once, then again, letting her finish. Letting the words land. Letting the language settle into the room. "Accessible," he repeated gently. "That's an interesting word." A micropause. Her smile held, but something flickered behind her eyes. A tightening. Barely visible, but there. "Can you walk me through what that looks like in real terms?" Jon asked. "What does accessibility mean here?" She shifted subtly in her seat. "It means offering high-quality products that people can trust," she said. "Things I personally use. Items made ethically, sustainably. Pieces that bring value into someone's life." Still calm. Still controlled. Jon glanced down at his notes again, then back up. "And these products," he said, tone still warm, "they're priced at?" The room quieted, not fully but enough. She answered without hesitation. "We're positioned as a premium brand. Quality costs money." "Right," Jon said, nodding. "So we're talking $80 for candles. Several hundred for home items." Her smile tightened just a fraction. "And I'm just curious," he continued, leaning forward slightly. "When you say, accessible to everyday people, how does that square with the reality that most families are budgeting groceries month to month?" The silence arrived all at once. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just heavy. She inhaled, then exhaled through her nose. "I think that framing is unfair," she said. "People choose what they value. Self-care is an investment." Jon didn't interrupt. He let the word hang. "An investment," he echoed softly. The audience shifted. A cough from somewhere in the back. Someone crossed their arms. "I guess what I'm asking," Jon said, still calm, "is whether luxury marketing sometimes convinces people they need expensive things to feel worthy. Especially when those things are sold under the banner of wellness." Her jaw tightened. "Wellness looks different for everyone," she replied. "I don't force anyone to buy anything." "No," Jon agreed. "But you do influence them." A beat. For the first time her smile slipped. It wasn't gone, just thinner. more deliberate. The temperature in the room seemed to rise. Jon shifted gears smoothly, like a driver easing onto a darker road. "I want to pivot for a moment," he said. "You've spoken a lot about privacy. About how difficult public scrutiny has been." Her shoulders straightened. "Yes," she said. "It's been incredibly challenging. But at the same time," Jon continued, "you've signed multiple media deals, launched a very public brand, and are doing a press tour. Help me understand how you balance wanting privacy with actively seeking attention." The word attention landed harder than expected. Her eyes narrowed. "That's not the same thing," she said quickly. "I can protect my personal life while still doing my professional work." "Of course," Jon said. "But when someone publicly asks for privacy while remaining constantly visible, people notice the contradiction." Her fingers curled slightly in her lap. "I think what's happening here," she said carefully, "is that you're framing things in a way that feeds into harmful narratives." Jon held her gaze. "I'm quoting your own interviews," he said. "I'm not creating anything. I'm asking you to clarify." The audience went completely still. She leaned back, crossing her arms. A defensive posture, subtle but unmistakable. "You know," she said, voice sharpening, "I expected something different from you." Jon raised an eyebrow. "I thought this would be a respectful conversation," she continued. "Not an interrogation." "This is respectful," Jon replied. "But respect doesn't mean avoiding hard questions." A murmur rippled through the crowd. She uncrossed her arms, leaning forward now, eyes flashing. "You're doing what the media always does to me," she said. "Twisting things. Painting me as a hypocrite." "I'm asking you to explain," Jon said evenly. "That's my job." "And what if I don't accept your premise?" she shot back. "Then challenge it," Jon replied. That's the conversation. The tension had crossed an invisible line. The audience could feel it. Crew members froze at their stations. Somewhere off stage, a producer's hand hovered over a headset. This wasn't promotional anymore. This was personal. She stared at him, breathing shallowly now. The polished composure was cracking, not shattered but stressed like glass under pressure. "You have no idea what I've been through," she said quietly. "The scrutiny. The harassment." "I don't," Jon admitted. "But accountability comes with influence." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "And if you can't handle being questioned," he added gently, "that might be worth reflecting on." The room sucked in air. Her eyes widened. "How dare you?" she whispered. Jon didn't blink. The audience gasped, not loud but collective. Something had shifted. Irreversibly. She pushed her chair back just an inch. Not enough to stand. Just enough to signal escape. "You're attacking me," she said. "I'm interviewing you," Jon replied. "There's a difference." Her voice trembled, not with sadness but with anger. "And if you can't tell the difference," he continued, "that says something." That was it. The moment. The spark before the fire. She stared at him as if seeing him for the first time, not as a host, not as a comedian, but as an obstacle. Her hand moved toward her microphone. "I don't have to sit here and take this," she said. Jon leaned forward slightly. "Sit down," he said calmly. "We're not finished." Her chair scraped against the floor as she stood. The audience erupted, gasps, whispers, disbelief. And just like that, the interview teetered on the edge of collapse. The crown wasn't gone yet. But it was slipping. And everyone in that room knew what was coming next. For a split second after she stood up, no one breathed. Not the audience. Not the crew. Not even the cameras, which seemed to hum louder in the sudden vacuum of sound. Her chair sat half pushed back, angled away from the desk, like an escape route already planned. The stage lights reflected off her eyes, making them look sharper, harder. This was no longer a controlled appearance. This was a standoff. Jon remained seated. That alone changed everything. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't wave his hands. He didn't lean back in discomfort. He stayed exactly where he was, palms resting lightly on the desk, posture calm, almost unsettlingly so. "Sit down," he said again, voice low even. "We're in the middle of a conversation." She laughed once. Short. Bitter. "No," she snapped. "This conversation is over." The audience gasped, louder this time. A ripple of shock ran through the seats like electricity. Phones stayed pocketed, but everyone leaned forward instinctively, as if proximity might help them understand what they were witnessing. "You invited me here," she continued, voice rising. "I came as a courtesy. I did not come to be ambushed." Jon tilted his head slightly. "An ambush implies surprise," he said. Your team approved every topic we're discussing. That doesn't mean you get to twist them, she fired back. I haven't twisted anything, he replied. I've quoted you. Directly. Her fingers curled around the strap of her purse, knuckles whitening. The polished calm she'd arrived with was gone now, replaced by something rawer, defensive, volatile. The audience felt it. They could sense the shift. This wasn't discomfort anymore. This was confrontation. You're biased, she said sharply. You came into this with your mind already made up. Jon leaned back for the first time, exhaling slowly through his nose. If I had my mind made up, he said, I wouldn't be asking questions. I'd be delivering monologues. A few quiet murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. She noticed. Her eyes flicked toward the audience, then back to Jon. Something hardened in her expression. You know what this is, she said. This is exactly what's always happened to me. People with power deciding who I'm allowed to be. Jon's gaze didn't waver. Power? He repeated. You walked into this studio with global recognition, massive influence, and a multimillion-dollar brand. Her voice sharpened. And you think that protects me? It gives you responsibility, he replied. That word hit her like a slap. Responsibility. She stepped fully away from her chair now, standing straight, shoulders squared, chin lifted in defiance. You have no idea what pressure feels like, she said. You've never lived under this level of scrutiny. I haven't, Jon agreed. But I have lived with accountability. And the two aren't opposites. The audience was no longer neutral. You could feel it. The subtle lean toward him, the way heads nodded, the way her words now seemed to hit resistance instead of sympathy. She sensed it too. Her tone shifted, darker now. So this is how it works, she said. You attack me and when I react you call me defensive? I'm not calling you anything, Jon said. Your reactions speak for themselves. That did it. Her composure shattered. How dare you, she snapped, voice trembling with fury. You sit there pretending to be some moral authority, some champion of truth, when you're just another man with a microphone. A collective inhale swept the room. Jon's eyes narrowed slightly. Not angry. Focused. I don't pretend to be anything, he said. I ask questions. That's the job. You're a bully, she shot back. You can't stand it when someone pushes back. Jon leaned forward, voice firmer now. Pushing back requires answers. You're avoiding them. The audience murmured again, louder this time. She turned toward them suddenly as if looking for rescue. Do you see this? She asked, gesturing wildly. This is what happens when a woman refuses to play along. Jon straightened. That's not fair, he said. And you know it. Oh really? She snapped back. You wouldn't treat a man like this. Jon's voice rose for the first time that night. Yes, I would, he said sharply. And I have. Many times. The audience reacted instantly, applause scattered at first, then growing. She froze. The sound hit her like cold water. Her face flushed. This is unbelievable, she muttered. Absolutely unbelievable. You're right, Jon replied. It is. Watching someone demand to be taken seriously while refusing to engage seriously. That line landed hard. Gasp. Whispers. Someone in the audience let out a quiet, wow. Her eyes burned. You are arrogant, she hissed. You think you're better than everyone else. I don't, Jon said. But I do believe no one is above being questioned. She laughed again, this time louder, more brittle. Of course you do, she said. A privileged white man lecturing me about accountability. The room erupted. Audible gasps. Sharp murmurs. The energy flipped instantly, no longer tense curiosity but open shock. Jon went still. The playful edge that sometimes softened his confrontations vanished completely. Wow, he said quietly. So that's where we're going. It's the truth, she shot back. You would never speak to someone like me this way if I weren't who I am. I speak this way to anyone who contradicts themselves, Jon replied. Race and gender don't exempt anyone from logic. The applause this time was louder, stronger, less hesitant. She turned back toward him, eyes blazing. You don't know the real world, she said. You've been famous forever. You're right, Jon said. But I've never complained about privilege while profiting from it. That was the moment the room tilted. Her mouth opened, then closed. The words hit her harder than anything else that night. Profiting? She shouted. I've been traumatized. By questions. Jon asked. Because that's all I've asked. She reached for her microphone, hands shaking now. This is ridiculous, she snapped. I'm leaving. Go ahead, Jon said, gesturing toward the exit. Walk off. The audience buzzed, anticipation crackling. You'll regret this, she warned. Regret what? Jon asked calmly. Asking questions? She stared at him, chest rising and falling rapidly. You turned them against me, she said, pointing toward the audience. Jon followed her gaze. No, he said. They're reacting to you. A voice from the crowd suddenly rang out. We're reacting to the entitlement. The studio exploded. Murmurs became voices. Voices became reactions. Not boos but something sharper. Disapproval. Her face drained of color. She spun back toward Jon, fury twisting her features. This is your fault, she snapped. Jon shook his head slowly. No, he said. This is what happens when someone isn't used to losing control of the narrative. She yanked at her microphone. Get me out of here, she shouted. Where's my team? A producer rushed onto the stage, hands raised in a calming gesture. Let's take a breath, the producer said softly. Don't tell me to breathe, she screamed. Get me off this stage right now. Jon stood up. The audience went silent again. You heard her, he said evenly. She wants to leave. Security appeared at the edge of the stage, hesitant, unsure whether to step in. Don't touch me, she warned, clutching her purse. I'll walk. Then walk, Jon replied. She took 2 steps toward the exit, then stopped. She turned back one last time, eyes blazing with something darker now, something dangerous. You're going to regret this, she said. My lawyers will be in touch. The room froze. Jon didn't flinch. About what? He asked. What law did I break? Her lips trembled. I asked questions, he continued. You didn't like them. That's not illegal. She looked around wildly, at the cameras, the audience, the crew. This interview is over, she declared. Jon nodded slowly. Yes, he said. It is. Security moved closer now. She stared at Jon with pure hatred. You think this makes you look good? She spat. I think it lets people decide for themselves, he replied. She turned and stormed toward the exit, heels striking the floor like gunshots. Security followed at a careful distance as she disappeared backstage. The audience sat stunned. Jon returned to his desk slowly and looked into the camera. Well, he said quietly, that happened. The applause began hesitantly, then grew. But backstage, raised voices echoed. The silence after she disappeared backstage was heavier than the shouting that came before it. It hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. For a moment, no one clapped. No one spoke. The audience sat frozen, caught between disbelief and the uneasy realization that they had just witnessed something real, something raw, unscripted, and irreversible. Jon remained standing behind his desk. The lights were still on him, bright and unforgiving, casting long shadows across the stage. He exhaled slowly, the kind of breath you take when adrenaline finally starts to fade. His shoulders dropped just slightly, not in defeat but in release. Well, he said softly, breaking the spell. That wasn't on the rundown. A ripple of nervous laughter spread through the crowd, easing the tension just enough to breathe again. Jon sat down carefully, straightening the papers in front of him even though he no longer needed them. His hands were steady but his eyes carried something different now, gravity. The weight of what had just happened. He looked directly into the camera. For everyone watching at home, he said, measured and calm, yes, that was real. The applause began again, this time stronger, more confident. Not celebratory, affirming. Jon waited for it to fade before continuing. And before anyone rushes to conclusions, he added, let me be absolutely clear. Every topic we discussed tonight was approved in advance. There were no surprise questions. No traps. No ambush. The camera slowly pushed in, tightening the frame. What you just saw wasn't hostility, he continued. It was what happens when someone who's used to controlling the story realizes they can't control this one. Backstage, the chaos was still unfolding. Her voice echoed through the hallway, sharp and frantic, bouncing off concrete walls and closed doors. A phone was pressed to her ear, her words tumbling out in a rush. I don't care what you have to do, she snapped. Get the footage. Threaten them. Pull legal strings, whatever it takes. That cannot air. A staffer stood nearby, pretending not to listen, pretending not to notice the trembling in her hands, the way her composure had completely evaporated. But it was too late. The damage hadn't been done by the questions. It had been done by the answers she never gave. Back on stage, Jon leaned back slightly, fingers interlaced. I don't enjoy moments like that, he said. Despite what people think, I don't wake up hoping to make guests uncomfortable. He paused. But I also won't pretend that contradictions don't exist. I won't smile and nod while selling fantasies that don't align with reality. The audience listened intently now. No murmurs, no movement. Respect, he continued, doesn't mean silence. Real respect means treating someone like an adult who can handle scrutiny. The applause swelled again, louder this time. Jon raised a hand gently, letting it fade. And here's the thing, he said. She actually raised important points. About media pressure, about public life, about scrutiny. Those were conversations worth having. His voice softened. But the moment she chose deflection over discussion, accusations over answers, she lost the room. He glanced briefly toward the backstage entrance, then back to the camera. And that's not something a PR team can fix. Behind the scenes, producers huddled around monitors, replaying the footage in stunned silence. Clips were already being flagged. Time codes marked. Social media managers stared at their screens as notifications began stacking faster than they could read them. One producer leaned toward Jon cautiously. They want it pulled, they whispered. Her team is demanding we don't air it. Jon didn't hesitate. No, he said simply. We air all of it. The producer blinked. All of it. Every second, Jon replied. Unedited. He looked back at the stage, at the empty chair where she had been sitting. The truth doesn't need protection, he added. It just needs daylight. Outside the studio, headlines were already being drafted. Commentary videos queued up. Opinions formed instantly, sharply divided but fiercely engaged. Some would defend her. Many wouldn't. But everyone would watch. Back on set, Jon straightened in his chair as the stage manager signaled they were nearly out of time. Now, he said with a faint, wry smile, I'm sure we'll hear statements. There will be explanations. Accusations. Maybe even threats. The audience chuckled knowingly. But I stand by every question I asked, he continued. And I challenge anyone who thinks they were unfair to watch the interview again, carefully, and tell me which question crossed the line. He leaned forward. Was it asking how a luxury product is accessible? Was it questioning privacy claims during a publicity tour? Or was it simply refusing to accept slogans instead of substance? The applause answered for him. Jon nodded once. The moment we stop asking those questions, he said, is the moment we stop doing our jobs. He glanced down at his desk, then back up, expression lighter now, the storm finally passing. All right, he said. Let's move on before anyone else threatens to sue us. Laughter rolled through the studio, releasing the last of the tension. But everyone knew, this episode wouldn't be remembered for what came next. It would be remembered for the moment the mask slipped. For the moment entitlement collided with accountability. For the moment 36 seconds changed everything. As the cameras pulled back and the lights dimmed, Jon gave the audience one last look. The truth, he said quietly, has a way of staying on camera. The screen faded to black. And somewhere millions of viewers leaned back in their chairs, stunned, replaying the moment in their minds, deciding for themselves who held their ground, and who completely unraveled. If this moment shocked you, disturbed you, or made you think twice, you're not alone. This is why we tell these stories. This is why we pull back the curtain. And this is why some footage was never meant to be seen. If you want more unfiltered moments where power is challenged, where narratives collapse, and where the truth refuses to stay quiet, hit that like button. Drop your thoughts in the comments. We know you have opinions. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next. And share this video because conversations like this only matter when people actually see them. This wasn't just an interview. It was a reckoning. And this was only the beginning.